Hey, good evening, everyone. And I'd like to call to order and welcome you to our Lucan Biddulph Council meeting for Tuesday, September the 17th. We do have an addition to the agenda, and that is in item number 9 on item 6.2.b, and it is an item of correspondence that was received today on that file. And council has seen it. The agenda has been updated to reflect it so that it will be part of the minutes and part of that file. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Okay. I would like to acknowledge that I am an ally of Indigenous peoples. The township of Lucan Biddulph is located on the treaty and traditional territory and ancestral lands of many Indigenous peoples and is covered by several Upper Canada treaties. We recognize and celebrate the contributions of Indigenous communities in our shared cultural heritage. Lucan Biddulph is now home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. They have a unique relationship with the land and its resources and continue to shape the history and economy of our municipality. We recognize the unique role that Indigenous peoples have in the development of our community. The contribution from Indigenous communities ensure the sharing of unique perspectives and traditional knowledge. The township recognizes the importance of consulting with our Indigenous neighbors in an effort to build constructive, cooperative relationships through meaningful engagement to inform our decision-making and to build partnerships. We acknowledge historic and ongoing injustices that Indigenous peoples endure in Canada, and we affirm our commitment to honoring Indigenous voices, nations, and cultures, and to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect. So, in light of our land acknowledgement, we all know that September 30th has been declared by the federal government the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, also referred to as Orange Shirt Day. And I'm wearing mine tonight as this is our last council meeting before September 30th. Our staff is in the process of developing an education session that our staff will be participating in on September 30th. And I hope that you will take some time to determine how you will recognize Orange Shirt Day. This day allows us the opportunity to recognize the heritage, cultures, and contributions of Indigenous peoples, as well as recognizing what true reconciliation means and opening ourselves up for a truthful, inclusive dialogue. In doing so, we honor those lost and recognize that the Canada of today will strengthen all that unites us. We do this acknowledging a painful past and will look forward to a future with hope and commitment of reconciliation. As a settler, the acts of truth and reconciliation can seem very daunting. We ask ourselves, what is my role and what can I do? At least I know I ask myself these questions. For me, it all comes down to education and asking those difficult questions. There are simple things that you can do to engage in truth and reconciliation. And the easiest way is to start by familiarizing yourself with the Truth and Reconciliation Report. The report begins with outlining 10 principles of reconciliation, and all of them are impactful in our individual ways. We can find a way to incorporate them into our personal everyday lives. The 3rd and 10th principles speak to me in particular. Reconciliation is a process of healing relationships that requires public truth sharing, apology, and commemoration that acknowledge and redress past harms. As settlers, we must recognize the process of healing that must continue through generations. And we must listen to our Indigenous neighbors as they share their truths, their stories, in an effort to progress through their healing process. We owe them the respect of acknowledging those truths. Number 10, reconciliation requires sustained public education and dialogue, including youth engagement about the history and legacy of residential schools, treaties, and Aboriginal rights, as well as the historical and contemporary contributions of Aboriginal peoples to Canadian society. The reality is we must do more than just talk about reconciliation. We must learn how to practice reconciliation in our everyday lives, and we must remain committed to the ongoing work of establishing and maintaining respectful relationships. What we have learned is that for many survivors and the generations that have followed, this commitment is foremost in their healing process. So I ask you today to commit to actively participating in reconciliation in your own personal way. I would also like to take this opportunity to, on behalf of council and staff, pass along our condolences to the Johnston family on the passing of their father and husband, Doug. Doug was a valued employee for the village of Lucan for 27 years. He also served our community as a volunteer firefighter for 20 years. Doug always supported the community and could be counted on to attend the many different activities that our community hosts. I dare say his most cherished role was that of cheerleader to his grandchildren. He and Sue would do everything they could to make the many activities that his 4 grandchildren were involved in. And I know personally, I saw him on countless occasions at the arena and baseball diamond cheering them on. So we do send our best during this difficult time to Sue, to Rod and Tara, Shelley and Trevor, and their families. We do not need to go into closed session today, but we do need to sit as the Committee of Adjustment. And I would ask for a mover and a seconder to move us into the Committee of Adjustment at 7 minutes after 6, so that we can sit as the Committee of Adjustment under the Planning Act. Councillor Westman and Councillor Hodgins, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So the first application we have in front of us is a consent application for a property on Saintsbury Line 34119. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Alyssa to walk us through the application.
Through the chair to the mayor and members of council, thank you. My name is Alyssa Soldo. I am a planner for Middlesex County, providing my professional planning services tonight for the township of Lucan Biddulph. There are 2 applications being brought forward tonight regarding the same property at 34119 Saintsbury Line. These applications, specifically for a consent and zoning bylaw amendment, will be addressed together in this presentation. So these will speak to agenda items 6.1A and 6.2A. The applicant is seeking to sever a lot with a frontage of approximately 48 meters in an area of 0.6 acres, while the retained lands would maintain a frontage of 38 meters in an area of 0.6 acres. The applicant has applied for a concurrent zoning bylaw amendment, which proposes to rezone the retained lands as a residential first density zone. It would also amend the site-specific future residential exception 5 holding zone on the severed lands to recognize the existing residential use, as well as the reduced frontage area and the privately owned septic system. The cumulative effect of both applications is to separate the 2 existing dwellings, allowing both to be located on their own lots. As the committee may recall, the subject lands were formerly subject to consent and zoning bylaw amendment applications, those being B10 2024 and Z3 2024. The subject property as a whole is currently a 1.22 acre lot on the west side of Saintsbury Line, north of Kent Avenue. The lands are legally described as part of Lot 2 and 3 on Plan 220 in the township of Lucan Biddulph, County of Middlesex, municipally known as 34119 Saintsbury Line. The land is currently occupied by the 2 single-unit dwellings. The property is surrounded by residential uses directly to the north and east, as well as institutional uses to the south and west. The property is designated settlement area in the County of Middlesex official plan. It is designated residential in the township of Lucan Biddulph's official plan. and it is also currently zoned future residential, exception 5, temporary holding zone in the comprehensive bylaw. No comments were provided by the public prior to the development of this report. Only one agency comment was received from the Asable Bayfield Conservation Authority with no concerns or opposition to the applications. As identified in the planning reports, staff are of the opinion that the proposal is consistent with the PPS and conforms with both the county and township official plans. Rezoning and permitting the existing dwelling to stay on the remnant lands within a future residential zone will provide an opportunity for the dwelling to be maintained within the existing housing stock within Lucan, but still prioritize the owner's plans to further develop the lands. Just as a note, we had missed a condition in the original report. We are recommending the addition of a condition for the consent application, which is stated as such, that the private sanitary services be confirmed to be wholly contained within the severed lands to the satisfaction of the chief building official. This condition will ensure that the private services are contained within the severed portions of the lands. Given the above, I am recommending approval of the consent application B14/2024, subject to the conditions provided in the report and above, and the zoning bylaw amendment application Z10/2024. I'm also recommending that the bylaw be brought forward for consideration this evening. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that, Alyssa. Are there any questions or comments on the report that was just delivered? Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Soldo. We've seen this property a few times on other planning reports. I just wanted to confirm for the lands to be severed, the lands shown in red on the map, are these still subject to the temporary use on that existing home? And is that still required to be removed at the expiry of that temporary use agreement?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Hodgins. So maybe I'll just jump in just to have a little bit more history on this one. Yeah, so the intent on this particular file with the rezoning was to kind of remove that temporary use holding zone to just allow the existing residence to be maintained as such until the site develops further. So while there may have been a request to keep it as an R1 property, it's more advantageous for us on the planning side of the equation to just recognize it as a future residential zone, which then would allow for the potential future redevelopment of that site. So we're removing that temporary zone, removing the holding, but we are placing it into a future residential zone, which just basically locks it in as it is right now.
Thank you. Follow up. So as far as the future development of that parcel, the lands to be severed, is that being considered for future development with the lands to the west and south, or is that just standalone as that smaller parcel?
Yeah, so through the chair, it would be its standalone parcel, so it's separate of the lands to the west and south. West, I guess.
Okay, thank you. And final follow-up. Is there, are we aware of any development plans for that property, or could this house remain for an indeterminate amount of time?
Yeah, so the intent with the rezoning was just to essentially allow the house to remain there as it is for an indeterminate amount of time, which is why we're suggesting the future residential zone, so it can't, you know, just ad hocly tear the house down and build a brand new house kind of situation. The owner does have particular plans to redevelop the site into you know, a more intensive style of development. It's just for his particular purposes at this point in time, he just wants to maintain the dwelling and then move forward with a more comprehensive plan for development on that severed portion in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Just on that, I know one of the concerns had been that it was going to with the outbuildings. This was, I think a couple of applications ago on this property. And that the potential that it would still remain as a contractor yard. I just want to ensure those buildings have been removed at this stage, I believe.
Yeah, through the chair, based on our site view and inspection, the building that was of concern previously has been removed.
And then with the addition of that, I guess the 12th condition, with regards to the septic, I mean, looking at the map, I assume that the septic can remain wholly on that lot as it's severed. Is there any concern that it can't meet that requirement?
Through the chair, I'll jump in again. As far as we're aware, as far as the applicant's aware, it's within the boundaries of the severed parcel. But certainly, the addition of the condition, at least from the regulatory perspective, solidifies the requirement that it has to be. So if it is located off that particular portion, they would have to move it physically on site. And there may be potential other options that they could pursue at that point.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, one last call. Is there any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, with that, you do have a recommended motion in front of you. I will read part of it. I'm not going to read all of it because it is quite lengthy, as there's 12 conditions attached to the motion. I will remind anybody that is watching this online or that has joined us in the audience that the full motion with the conditions can be found on our agenda on our website. So the recommended motion is that application for consent B-14/2024 filed by Fernando Cabral to sever a parcel with a frontage of approximately 47.5 meters on Saintsbury Line and an area of approximately 2,430.5 square meters, and the remnant lands a frontage of approximately 38.2 meters on Saintsbury Line with an area of approximately 2,526.4 square meters for a property legally described as part of Lot 2 and 3, Plan 220 in the Township of Lucan Biddulph, County of Middlesex, be granted. And as I say, it's subject to the 12 conditions that have been applied, and the reasons are set out in that motion. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we do now need to adjourn our Committee of Adjustment meeting and convene a public meeting under the Planning Act, and we will do so at 6:18. And a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Westman. All in favor? And that's carried. So we can be considered to be in a public planning meeting, but before I do that, I'll just go over the rules of the public planning meeting that we have, that the members of the public who wish to speak wish to receive any further notifications of any applications being heard or considered today are asked to send an email to planning@lucanbiddulph.on.c requesting further notification. I know that some of us in the audience have arrived a few minutes after the meeting started. There is a clipboard that I would ask that you would sign in with your name and contact information. Please be advised that comments expressed and any written material presented will become a matter of public record for full disclosure. If you have any questions following the meeting, you can always follow up with our planner. Any members of the public who have requested to speak or will choose to speak will be given 10 minutes to speak to the application. And please note that all questions and comments shall be directed to the chair of the meeting. And I would ask that when you come up to speak at the speaker's podium, that if you're a member of the public, you state your name and your address. I would like also to remember or remind everyone that in keeping with our procedural bylaw and our zone policy, I would remind all of our meeting participants to use respectful language and decorum throughout the meeting. I went through everything, I think, with most of everybody in the audience, but just a reminder, the planner will deliver his or her report, staff report. Then the applicant or their agent will be given opportunity to speak. I will then ask the public if they have any comments. And then there would be any comments or clarifications from council at that time. All right, with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Alyssa, even though the zoning bylaw amendment application that we have to address was addressed in the last report. I don't think that there's anything to add, but I will ask you if there is anything that you need to add to this.
No, that is all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So it is the zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 10-2024. And of course, it's on the Saintsbury line address and property that we just spoke to. I would ask council if they had any further questions on the zoning bylaw. Okay, with that, the recommended motion is that zoning bylaw amendment application Z-10/2024 filed by Fernando Cabral to rezone the retained portion of lands identified in consent application B/14/2024 to residential first density zone and amend the remnant lands to a site-specific future residential exception 5 zone to recognize the privately owned septic system, reduced frontage and reduced area for lands legally described as part of Lot 2 and 3, Plan 220 in the Township of Lucan Biddulph, County of Middlesex be approved, and that the implementing bylaw be forwarded to Township Council for consideration upon receipt of a deposited reference plan. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan and Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, the next item that we have in our public meeting is for a property at 34400 Granton Line. And I would turn it over to Dan to walk us through this application.
Through the chair, thanks, Madam Mayor, members of council. So for those that don't know me, my name is Dan Fitzgerald. I'm Manager of Planning with Middlesex County, providing professional planning services here for Township Council tonight. So the purpose of this report is to provide council with information as well as gathering feedback regarding an application for a zoning bylaw amendment for a site that's located at 34400 Granton Line. So the applicant in this particular case is proposing to rezone the lands from a highway commercial or C2 zone to a site-specific residential third density exception zone. And the purpose being to permit the establishment of a planned 18-unit townhouse development on the lands. So the subject property is approximately 0.49 hectares or 1.21 acres in area. And it is located on the northeast of the intersection of Granton Line or County Road 59, as well as Levitt Street. The lands are surrounded by low-density single detached dwellings to the north, the west, and the south. And a farm industrial operation to the east. They are designated settlement area in the county's official plan and hamlet in the township's official plan, which I would note permits generally all types of uses subject to compatibility criteria that we would review through the official plan policies. So the applicant submitted a planning justification report, a concept site plan, conceptual servicing brief, noise studies, dust studies, as well as a phase 1 and 2 environmental assessment. And all of these have been included in the agenda attached to the website, and that's for full transparency for both members of the public as well as members of council. The development would be connected to full municipal sanitary services as well as water, while also proposing to control stormwater on site and release rates to what we would refer to as pre-development rates. So additionally, an upgrade to Levitt Street as well as an unopened road allowance would be required through the development, and sidewalks would be extended from Granton Line to the entrance of the development site. It is noted that the environmental site assessment submitted did identify potential contamination on the southwest portion of the lands, And that's due to the former existence of a gas pump as well as auto service shop on the lands. So staff are seeking additional information from the proponent on the extent of the remediation required to accommodate sensitive land uses. So in this case, being residential. Council is advised that the site would require clearance through a record of site condition from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks prior to any future construction on the site. So I just bring that up as a note to council. As part of the rezoning, the applicant is seeking to permit townhouse developments on the site. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment also seeks to establish generally the following three specific criteria. And that is to reduce the minimum front yard depth from development, which would be 8 meters existing to 1.5 meters. And that's specifically on the frontage along Granton line. The second is to reduce the exterior side yard setback along Levitt Street from 8 meters to 4 meters. And thirdly, to reduce the minimum rear yard setbacks from 10 meters to 4 meters. The application was circulated in advance of the public meeting to both agencies as well as neighbors within 120 meters of the site. Majority of the agency comments that we did receive relate more specifically to the detailed site design. It is noted that a road dedication would be required to the County of Middlesex through the implementation of a site plan application, which has been accounted for by the applicant through the design shown on their concept plans. The township received several comments from members of the public in advance of the public meeting. These comments have been shared with staff as well as council in advance of the meeting. I would generally say that the themes will be addressed in a future report to council with a recommendation. However, it is noted that concerns were raised regarding the proposed number of units and density on site, reductions to the setback standards that are existing in the bylaw, concerns about whether or not the existing sanitary and water capacity is available for the development, as well as concerns about the potential for stormwater management on site and flooding to neighboring parcels. So additionally, I did receive a comment which was shared that did express potential concern for rear yards facing Granton line and that it wouldn't meet the existing context of development throughout the community. And that's not necessarily saying they would, it's just there was a concern that if the development was there, if they don't want rear yards facing Granton line. So a number of applicable policies have been included in the information report that is before council, as well as the public to review. So these policies will be used to provide a future recommendation to council at, again, a future meeting. So thank you for the opportunity to share the development proposal with you, and I look forward to hearing comments from both the public and council regarding the proposal. So thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Dan. I appreciate that. At this time, I know we've got representation from Exo Homes in person as well as virtually. And I would, Laura, you're gonna, okay, so Laura, if you want to come up to this speaker's desk, I will turn it over to you for any comment on behalf of the applicant. Laura Jameson is a representative from Zelenka Priamo for Exo Homes. Okay, Laura.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, members of council. Thank you for having me this evening. As mentioned, my name is Laura Jameson. I'm here from Zelenka Priamo as a planner representing our client Exo Homes, who's the proponent of this development. Just a brief overview here. So what we're proposing, as stated previously, is 18 townhouses with approximately 37 parking spaces. We are proposing these townhouses to front onto public streets, including Granton Line and Levitt Street, which are, again, oriented to the streets to activate the public realm. I will note that sidewalks along Levitt Street and Granton Line are going to be provided as part of this, this development and will further contribute to a safe pedestrian environment. Obviously, there were a number of concerns from the public about the site servicing. In support of this application, we did submit a site servicing brief to address sanitary, water, and stormwater strategies. The servicing brief concluded the connections for the proposed development to existing municipal infrastructure within the Levitt Street right-of-way. That was for particularly sanitary and water services, with the understanding that capacity is available in the municipal system. There are also 2 stormwater management facilities proposed to accommodate stormwater and maintain or even improve the existing drainage situation. With that being said, there will be no external runoff onto any of the adjacent properties because of these stormwater management controls. Ultimately, we are seeking relief here from the standard residential third density setback provisions to accommodate the internal roadway as shown on the screen, where this will intentionally limit traffic impacts on adjacent properties, rather than having headlights flashing into neighboring yards from members of the proposed development, sorry. They will be shining into the development itself, and those townhouses will effectively block all of that light onto adjacent properties. Overall, the proposed development is of an appropriate density for the lands and is, considering the surrounding context, it is appropriate and desirable. I'm here to answer any questions that any members of council may have later on as well. And thank you so much for your time.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Laura. At this time, I will open it up to any members of the public that would like to make comment. A reminder that we did receive some written responses and comments, and they've been made as part of this package. Excuse me. And I just want to assure anybody that has submitted something written, council's seen it, the planners have it, and it does form part of the package and will form part of the subsequent planning report that Dan spoke about. He will also accept written comments after this meeting up until about mid-October. And so if anybody wants to submit anything further, they can do so to Dan, as I say, until mid-October. So I would ask, is anybody from any member of the public wish to say anything to this application in front of us? Sure. If you can come up to the speaker's desk. And as I said, your name and your address, and then there's a button on there. Yeah, perfect.
Angel Filion, 701 Levitt Street. And I just had a concern about overflow parking.
Overflow parking, like from visitors and that sort of
Yes.
thing? Okay. And the concern would be where?
Would they have the ability to be parking on Levitt Street on either side of the street?
Okay. I don't know how that would be addressed. I know that there's visitor parking. But as for the parking on Levitt, Jeff?
And through you, Madam Mayor, so Levitt is a public street, so it would follow the same parking as any street in the municipality. So during the winter season, there'd be no overnight parking. During the summer season, there will be parking, as they will, as part of this development, they'll develop Levitt into a formal street. We'd be looking at asphalt, curb and gutter, the sidewalk along the one side. So there will be room to allow parking, just like it is on all our urban streets.
Along the one side only?
And again, I'd have to look at that right now to see exactly the layout, but yeah, there would be, some sort of definition there, and depending on how wide that Levitt Street is and how traffic can go up and down it with cars parked there.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
there any other comments or clarifications that the public would like? Was there any members of the public? Oh, sorry, Bonnie. Yep, come on up.
Bonnie Foreign, 513 Station Street, Granton. I have a concern about the traffic going, when there is parking with the traffic going back and forth to, Sylvite. The industrial land at the back, we often have transport trucks as well as combines and other farm machinery traveling down that street. So that could be quite dangerous, especially as they turn off of the Granton line onto Lovett. You will have two driveways also exiting onto that street. So that could be quite dangerous.
Thank you. Okay, right. Any other comments, clarifications? Lisa, were there any other members of the public that joined us via Zoom? No, okay. Okay, with that, I would ask council if there's any comments or clarifications that they would like. Councillor Westman.
All right, through you, Madam Chair. I've got a couple things I'd like to kind of, because I've talked to the neighbors quite a bit because it's my neighborhood too. And I've talked to the planners and had some conversation with Public Works. I think some of the concerns that were brought forward were pretty valid. You know, the stormwater management, and I know that's being addressed through some stormwater retention areas and what have you, but I think that's something that we got to get right because there already are some issues with water as it stands. There's also some issues about having adequate fencing along the properties to the north of the package there. So making sure that fencing is in place so that there's a measure of privacy and definition of lot lines. I want to address the wastewater issue. There's been some concerns brought forward about capacity at the wastewater treatment plant, and that's been addressed. I think in writing here, there is lots of capacity left there, so it's not an issue. We're just over 40% capacity at this point, so there is plenty of capacity left. I was also speaking with Public Works, and better and newer pumps have been put in to help manage flows and things like that. So the wastewater treatment plant is in good order, and it's got lots of capacity. So there's that. Now, I do share the concerns about the frontage of the front of houses facing on the Granton line. We do have a certain aesthetic as you go along that street. We want to maintain that appearance so that it's not, you know, nice houses, and then all of a sudden the backyards of other houses. So I think that's something to be considered, just to keep in the aesthetic of the community so that we're not having a break from that. Now, regarding parking, I would ask, sorry, I can't remember your name. Hi. Could there not be some additional overflow parking established on the proposed Dominion Street? So that's the street that's going to be established at the east side of the property. There's yeah, it looks like there might be a little bit of room there for some overflow parking as well. Is that possible to do that, or would that be something to even consider? Yeah.
Yeah, so through the chair, just in terms of the comment, staff can certainly take that back and discuss that further with the applicant to see if there's any potential opportunities for on-street parking through the upgrades of, well, in this case, an unopened road allowance, and then even on Levitt Street as well.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that, because that is a concern. I mean, when you got 18 units, there is going to be overflow parking. There's going to be people visiting, and especially around holidays and so on through the summer when you know, entertaining is more prevalent. So you know, I share the concerns of the residents around the area that may be an ongoing concern. I would also echo Mrs. Foran's comments about farm equipment going down Levitt Street. One of the most common machines that go up and down that street are fertilizer spreading equipment that is 2 lanes wide. The big, well, they're not called terra gauges anymore, but the big fertilizer spreaders. If you have on-street parking, they're stopped, they're not moving. So we want to make sure that Sylvite is a valuable member of our community as a employer and you know, taxpayer. We want to make sure that they're able to do their work as well. So that's my comments on the subject.
Thank you, Councillor Westman. Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As usual, Council Westman was very thorough and took some of my questions, but that's fine. Just about the parking, I just wanted a clarification about the parking. So when I was looking at the site plan, the map, it looked like there was only like 4 spots there. And so just to understand it, the parking was like 1.5. That I guess I'm asking, there was 1.5 per unit parking. Is that what's being provided? Plus there's 4 overflow spots, because that was a concern too about parking. We hear that a lot about parking and congestion on the streets and traffic and that sort of thing, kids playing and that sort of thing. So am I correct in understanding that? So
through the chair, the 1.5 that we're requesting is actually just the standard residential third density parking rate of 1.5 with a proposal of about 37 parking spaces, and there will be garages associated with these townhouses as well. There will be more than 1 parking space or 1.5 parking spaces per unit. We have accommodated 3 visitor parking spaces dedicated right on the site. And then, as is being discussed, potentially overflow parking on the Dominion Street right of way or Levitt Street, depending on the width of the road.
all right. Okay, thank you. I just have a couple more, if I may, Madam Mayor. Thank you. So when I actually, when Mr. Fitzgerald brought up the environmental report, just about the groundwater impacts, when I read that, I was kind of concerned about that. And I'm just wondering, I'm not sure who to ask, but when's that going to be addressed? How's that going to be addressed? And does that mean that my understanding is that when you have that sort of contamination, you got to dig everything out to be able to build. So I don't know if that's how that's going to impact that as well. So I'm not sure who to ask that question to, who the expert is on that. So I'm looking at Dan.
Through the chair, not the expert, but
Okay.
we have to rely on the experts for that. So when it comes to, I guess, the development authority's perspective, when we receive a report like that, we would be looking to the applicant's proponent to give us what they think is necessary in terms of like a remediation plan. But really, at the end of the day, contamination is specifically within the realm of the province, not municipalities or the county. So
All right.
it's up to them to satisfy the province, not technically us at our level. What we would typically do though, at the zoning level, is include some type of holding provision, ensuring that they've received that record site condition from the ministry. The site's good to go, it's clean. And then we would proceed with removal of the holding and then potential building permits after that point in time. So that's kind of the checks and balances that are in place with that. With respect to the actual remediation, in the actual ESA phase 2, so the environmental site assessment phase 2 that was done on the property, it does make recommendations at the end that the remediation efforts would be provided under separate cover to the applicant. So we will seek clarification of that for sure.
Right. Thank you very much. I have one more. So when I was reading the letters that are coming from residents, the theme that I'm picking up is wastewater, because I know our treatment plant up there's at 41%, I think. So I think wastewater. So I think Jeff, if I may ask Jeff, the concerns were about wastewater, cost to residents about wastewater. Also the drainage was also an issue too, because when you start putting down more, as we know, you start putting down more pavement, that's not porous and that water's got to go somewhere. So these to me seem to be like a lot of themes that I think everyone has mentioned about that, and it was about the not just the traffic, but just like the wastewater, water runoff. How do we handle that? Is that a concern going forward? And if I can ask Jeff.
Yeah, and through the chair. So I'll start with the sanitary, and Councillor Westman is correct. There is capacity at the plant. The plant is designed to take more. We're actually in talks with Aqua. We're and keeping them who are our operators, keeping them in the loop, and they are they are encouraged by actually a little bit higher flows of sanitary to keep the system healthy. So I think I'm not too concerned about this growth in the sanitary side of things. On the storm side, and be very clear that there is an outlet designed for this area, Levitt Street, and it runs back up and goes on to Queen Street, and all that water comes down through there. It is a municipal drain. It is working. It is based on agricultural standards. The development knows this ahead of time. They've already been given this information, so they have to contain the water on site. They can only release the water based on the drain that can take it. And that's why those two sites of storm control are there. So in the case of a large drain, and I also add, before I go any further, at the present moment, there'll be some water coming from the north because the lay of the land does come down through the fire hall. The water is diverted down there. That flow of water will have to be acknowledged and controlled as well. So we have to keep an idea of where the flows are coming across here, make sure everything's working correctly, store it and release it into the drain as an agricultural drain. So, I mean, there's a lot of engineering that goes into this, but it is doable. It's the same thing we do in all our developments. Our municipality does rely on municipal drains as outlets. So this is not unusual in the grand scheme of things. And so, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other comments? Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. Already lots of good questions and comments from the public and fellow councillors. So I'll try not to repeat those. But I do have a couple questions. One being with respect to the unopened road allowance on Dominion Street, when that's required to be built out and paved, is that cost responsibility on the developer for extending that road, or is that determined currently, or would the municipality bear any costs for that?
And through the chair, so that design right now, Levitt Street, or not Levitt, Dominion Street is not open at the present moment. So as part of this development, I would say that the developer has to open it up and make sure that it is connected to their development, and there's a turning area for snow plows and garbage coming in at the end as the proposed design shows in there, but it would go back on the developer to do that.
Okay, thanks for that. A question for through your worship to Ms. Jameson. You mentioned that the units fronting on Granton Line and Levitt Street, can you explain again like how they would be oriented? Because the driveways are behind or internal to the site, but would the front of the unit and the front door be facing those streets? Can you clarify that?
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, so essentially, yes. You would have like your rear entrance would be from that internal roadway or from the garage. But your front door would be facing onto Levitt Street or Granton Line. As you can see on the concept plan behind you, we do have like sidewalk connections proposed from the house or the townhouse unit right out to the public sidewalk. So that's what I was referring to when I was mentioning the orientation of the townhouses is towards the public street.
Okay, thank you for that. So that clarifies that for me. So those are not rear yards there. So are there any, is there any amenity space within the development? Seeing that there's not that kind of rear yard amenity space, is there any other amenity space for these residents?
through the chair. So the stormwater areas, the one of the sort of north or the top part of your screen there, it's not proposed to be like filled at all times. It would be a depression, so it could sort of double as an amenity area if when it's not filled with water, obviously. But no, there is no, like, aside from the small sort of yards or areas that are going to be landscaped, there's limited outdoor amenity space.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And just a comment, like it is, you know, it's quite a, it is an intense, or a dense form of development, leaving limited opportunities for amenity spaces. So that would be a comment I would have, for the applicant to consider, if there are opportunities for, you know, it might be at a loss of units, but to look for opportunities for amenity space for those residences, so they have that. And that further to that, and the intensity of the site, we heard some concerns from the residents and other counselors about those setback reductions. And I just think it makes it a little bit more challenging, in particular around the boundaries of the site, along the north edge there, where it would be nice to have some sort of, you know, having that setback just to kind of provide more separation with the abutting property owners and giving some space for buffering or landscaping. It just seems like, you know, with the intensity of the development, there's maybe going to be less opportunities for tree plantings and that sort of buffering. So just a comment to leave with you for that. And then lastly, it was discussed, but the contamination is concerning. I looked through those environmental site assessments, and Councillor Regan did ask my question about the timeline of that. I'd be interested in finding that out, but I presume that, and maybe through you, your worship, to Dan, that record of site condition, that is sort of like a first step that has to be addressed, I presume, before any development would go ahead.
So through the chair, I wouldn't say first step, I would say that's what they need in order to get the clearance to develop the site. So there's a bunch of things that they have to do before that. Then they get the record of site condition, which is basic clearance from the ministry. Then they can get their building permits. So it's kind of that final check before the development or the actual building permit process occurs.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, it just seemed like reading through those reports and the amount of contaminants, it's quite concerning to see. I guess that's what you get with buried fuel tanks. So I hope that all the proper due diligence is done, and for the safety and health of the public, the current residents and the future residents. And through that process as well, just with like, it's the proximity to the municipal roadway and I guess the county roadway. I'm not sure if that would be addressed, like if there is contamination that has migrated into municipal lands, I think that should be addressed as well, and by the property owner. So just a note for staff that's being considered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments. I will echo what my colleague said. A lot of my questions were addressed by the previous counselors. Just a couple things. I'm not great with visualizing what the final product will look like. So we have a number of home developments in our community, and the parking has been touched on numerous times. And you did bring up that there's going to be garages. Will the garages be able to fit a vehicle in them? And will they be able to fit a, you know, like not a Focus, like a car? Yeah, like a truck.
So through you, Chair. The intent is to fit like a car or sort of like an SUV or mid-sized vehicle. The driveway is intended to be long enough to accommodate like a pickup truck, for example, though.
That is good. Good to know. With regards to the stormwater management, again, probably putting the cart before the horse, but just in thinking about Councillor Hodgins' comments about green space, is the idea that it will be a pond, or I'm thinking more about like the Asable Fields and what they're doing with that lid program and maybe doing something with that as opposed to an actual pond. And I don't know who I'm looking at with the experts for.
Yeah, I'll come on that. Yeah. I mean, as we go through this process, there's an addition to that. We will be asking for a landscape design come through. And if we can incorporate landscaping around the pond and promote some natural growth, we have to be a little bit careful how tight this area is because and I don't mean to sound that a meadow isn't beautiful, but a meadow maybe not be right next to someone's back door. So we have to be a little bit careful about naturalizing certain areas. But I think there's a real opportunity here as we go along with the engineering to see some maybe some tree planting, particularly closer to Dominion. Maybe we can you know, it'll be a green space there that we can incorporate some extra green space around there. I'm not saying right now that we'll use Levitt Street, but we certainly can infringe on Levitt on that unopened road allowance to promote some extra green space like we, you know, and again, I don't want to get into talking about walkways and that sort of thing yet, but I think there's an opportunity there, and I would definitely work with the developer to see what we could do with Dominion Street.
Well, I just know that there's been some interesting stormwater management practices that we've used, and given that it is a smaller site, just looking at maybe implementing some of those. So, then with snow plowing and garbage, is this going to be the responsibility of the applicant, the landowner, as opposed to our municipal services?
Yeah, so through the chair, so typically condo sites are privately serviced with garbage. However, I would state that Blue Water Recycling, as long as they've reviewed the plan and they're comfortable that they can appropriately navigate through the site, they will offer services within condo sites. It just, there may be specifics that, you know, all the bins have to be placed on one side of the road, which is kind of what we're seeing with a few other sites in town. So it could be possible, and certainly with the design that's proposed to actually offer through traffic where there's no turnaround within the site, we've already received comments from them that they believe that they can service this particular parcel.
And then with snow removal, will that be done privately, or again, is it a public service?
So snow removal would have to be private because it's a private road, not a municipal road.
And then back to the green space, just wondering, since there is no park or amenity space, will one of the conditions be money in lieu of parkland?
Yeah, so through the site plan process, we would look at a cash in lieu of parkland dedication, or through the condo process, whatever comes first.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, any further comments? So just to remind the public that, oh, sorry, Councillor Hodgins, sorry.
No, I apologize. I forgot one of my questions. But thank you. Through you to Ms. Jameson, I wanted to ask about the tenure of these units, whether they are will be for sale or whether they'll be rentals, if you have that information yet. And if you could just comment on the affordability of these units as well. Thank you.
Yeah, so through the chair, at this time, all that we are aware of is that they are intended to be condominium units. We don't have any further information as to the tenants or any information about the affordability of the units right now. that is something that will be ironed out through not only the condo process, but a site plan approval and detailed design as well.
So I see Mr. Sousa's hand is up. So I will if you turn your mic on, Carlos, I'll let you speak.
Yeah, hi, everybody. I'm Carlos Sousa, one of the owners of Exo Homes. I can answer that question. So our intention is to offer them for sale at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you. Did you have anything else, Councillor Hodgins? Going once? Okay. With that, I will just remind the public that this report is being delivered to us tonight for information only, so there's no decision. I think Dan's done a great job there's still a lot of steps that have to happen before a report with a recommendation will be coming to council. A reminder to anybody that hasn't signed in, if you can sign in with your contact information, then you'll be kept up to date as to anything that happens. We'll accept public comments until about mid-October, and a reminder that those public comments can be sent to planning@lucanbiddulph.on.ca. And I want to thank members of the public for coming out tonight and for also providing written comments. It's always encouraging when our residents do participate in this process. I want to thank the representatives from Exo Homes for joining us tonight. Laura, thank you for coming in person. And with that, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive the report PL-24-2024 for information. Councillor Westman and Councillor Hodgins, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. And we will adjourn our public meeting at 1 minute after 7. A mover and a seconder. Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman, all in favor? And that's carried. Now, thank you very much, Laura. To the members of the public, we still have a council meeting in front of us, and you are more than welcome to stay and participate, but we do understand if you want to leave, and now would be the time to do so. So thank you again for coming. Okay. We're doing that now. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Okay, so we do have a court of revision in front of us, and so I need a mover and a seconder for the motion that council adjourn our regular meeting, excuse me, at 2 minutes after 7. To sit as the court of revision under section 97 of the Drainage Act as amended to consider the Nagle Drive 2024 and that Mayor Kathy Burkhart Jessen be appointed as chair. A mover and a seconder, Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Regan. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So we do have one item in front of us, and that is the Nagle Drain. And at this point, Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
And through the chair, so this is the court of revision. This is for the Nagle Drain. The report was presented to council at the acceptance meeting a few weeks ago. In the process of the court of revision, we did send out notifications about the court of revision to the people on the drain. We did not receive any further inquiries or did not receive any appeals on the assessment that were assigned to the people in the report. So at this time, I have no further information to bring forward for the court on the drain.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Jeff. I see 2 members of the public. Are there any comments, appeals, inquiries from the members of public?
I was just wondering the timing, yes, I thought it was more
If I can get you to come up to the speaker's chair, turn the mic on. I need your name and your address, and then you can direct your questions, Jeff.
So I'm Daniel Harrigan and I live at 35501 Roman Line. And we own one of the current properties that the Nagle Drain will be going through. So I guess I thought that this was more of an informative meeting on timing and if there was any changes or anything like that, but obviously not.
So through the chair, so just to make sure that if there's anybody watching or whatever, so this is the Court of Revision. So it's an opportunity for anybody on the drain because they've been assessed. The report has been released, so everybody knows what the drain looks like, but what their costs are. So this is an opportunity if someone disagreed with the amounts they're being assessed on the drain. So that's what this process is. Now, having said that, I understand maybe just a little bit of a clarification. So once we get past this meeting, then we still have a little bit of a waiting period before we can go to tender. But basically, this is the last public meeting before the drain can go to tender and then onward to construction.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, with that, so that's just the motion that comes out. Do I have to? Okay, so that's the only motion I need, right? Okay, all right, so we do have did the court have any questions? So, okay. So the motion in front of us is that the Court of Revision, having met on behalf of the Nagle Drain 2024, does hereby adopt the drainage assessment schedule dated June 12th, 2024, as submitted by Spreet Associates Limited. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. And mover and a seconder that the Court of Revision be closed at 6 minutes after 7 in order to reconvene our regular council meeting. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Westman, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. We have in front of us 2 sets of minutes. I guess we have a number. We have 3 sets of minutes. Regular council meeting minutes from September 3rd and special council meeting minutes from September 3rd and September 5th. If nothing needs to be amended, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve those as circulated. Councillor Regan, Councillor Hodgins, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. There's been nothing that's been added to business arising. Did council want to add anything to the business arising? Any questions on business arising? Okay, then we will move on to items of correspondence. There's only a few of them that were received this time. And Ron did actually want to speak to one item. So Ron, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item number 2 in the correspondence was in regards to the flood hazard identification and mapping program. And that's a 50% matched federal funding program. And that's something that we've discussed with the ABC in years past. Jeff, I believe, our Director of Public Works has reached out to Jeff Cade at the Conservation Authority. So just to keep council in the loop, we will be trying to set up an initial meeting with the ABCA to see if there's opportunities with regard to this program. It's a 50% off basically sale for a developer, and we, depending on how that meeting goes and whether there's capacity at the ABCA to do this with us or for us, we may then reach out to the developers, because it is to the developer's advantage to have this type of mapping available for future development. So anyway, just for information at this point for council.
Thank you for that. Were there any other items, or were there any questions on that, or anything else that council wanted to speak to in the items of correspondence? Okay, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive those items for informational purposes. Councillor Regan and Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. On to committee reports. Nothing from Blue Water. Anything from CEDC? Councillor Regan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We will be meeting on the 25th of September, and I'll have a report for council October 1st.
Okay, thank you very much. Lake Huron meets the first weekend in October. Fire boards, both boards have meetings upcoming. ABCA,
We will be meeting this Thursday.
Parks and Recreation.
We will be meeting this Thursday, probably not at the same spot, and I'll have a report for council October 1st.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
On to staff reports. I don't believe that there are anything verbal. Anything, Jeff?
If you don't mind, Madam Mayor, there is one update, and I have gotten a couple inquiries. So I just kind of want to give council an update. The walkway has been paved out to the commercial center. And I don't know if people have had a chance to walk it yet. We put rumble strips along the edge. We thought that was appropriate in this case. I'm trying to line up pavement markings next. There'll be a double white line, and we'll create a no man's land with the rumble strips in the middle, and try and separate traffic and pedestrian or cyclists using the trail. I have had inquiries about markers and that sort of thing. I really, at this point, I'm open to options, but at this point, I want to see what it looks like and how it performs before I comment further on what type of mark or what type of looking for the name, but anyways, yeah, pillar, anyways, and see what's going on there. So if you're getting questions, I will be taking a look at it and see what goes on there. So.
Great. Thank you very much for that update. I'm going to put you on the spot, Dan, because there's a bylaw that is on, that we're going to hopefully pass. Did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, through the chair. Thanks so much. I was going to speak to that. So just for council's reference, there is a bylaw that's attached to the agenda tonight. It's bylaw 209-2024, and that's to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw to put into place the zoning for the Kleinfeld Ave and Princess Street draft plan of subdivision. So just to recall, there's 10 units on Kleinfeld, and then 2 lots supporting semi-detached units on Princess Street. So as a condition of the original decision of council, the rezoning was to be brought back after the official plan amendment was passed by the County of Middlesex and enforced in effect. So at this particular time, that has happened. We've received notice that the official plan amendment is enforced in effect, and the developer is now working on the more detailed design for this particular site. So we did feel that it was the appropriate time to bring forward the zoning bylaw amendment. So it's exactly as originally presented in the report, and it is on the agenda tonight. So if anyone has any questions, I can certainly answer those now.
Thank you. Any questions on that bylaw? Okay, thank you. Councillor comments. Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question, if I may, just for Jeff, just on the sidewalks. I know we spoke earlier about it. And I know that we've got the rumble strips in, we're going to have the markings on it. There was some concerns from the community just about the safety of that. So if we're going to look at any kind of physical barrier between, the King's Highway and that walkway, I'm just wondering how long that would be before we make that decision to put any physical barrier between the two. It has, again, the reason I say physical barriers because the rest of it has curbs. There's sidewalk and curb. This is just sort of that. So I did receive a few concerns about the way it looks now. I understand that it's not finished, and I get that, and I told them that, and I said, and I did explain to the people that when I spoke to you the other day about just what it was going to look like. But I'm just wondering what's that time frame between when we decide what the final look is going to be.
So through the mayor, so just going to make sure I clarify what you're asking. So physical barrier, like as in a curb?
Well, either a curb or perhaps the delineators that we talked about, some marker, something that distinguishes it from highway sidewalk. The curb, when we see, we see the curb there, usually that's the marker for most people driving. The concern that what they had was that, and I have too, is that there is no physical differentiation between that sidewalk or the pavement of the highway and the pavement of the sidewalk. That was the concern.
Yeah, and through the mayor. So, until that section is urbanized, there will not be a curb.
Okay.
Just because of stormwater, we don't have access to stormwater. And there's a lot of, if there's going to be some development out there, that should trigger the urbanization out there, more than what we have today. We are collecting it in the DCs. So it is a plan to urbanize it. So at some point, we will urbanize it, put full cement sidewalks in with curb and gutter, just like we do on Main Street.
Okay.
Having said that, today and in the foreseeable future, until there is some more development taking place out in that area, we will have the paved shoulder.
Okay.
So the delineators are really the only option at this point to try and distinguish the difference between the walkway and the roadway. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like at the present moment. Let's get the line markings down and see what it looks like. And then if we do need the delineators, we can easily put them back in. The City of London use them in certain spots where you're walking right next to traffic. But I would like to see everybody see that there is going to be about a meter of no man's land that are going to be divided between the traffic and the walkway. So you should have a good meter of paved area that distinguishes where the traffic is and where you can walk. So I don't want traffic moving over, but I don't want pedestrians moving over the other way. So once that's down, I think we'll have a better idea if delineators are needed, and then we can go from there.
Right. Thank you very much, Jeff. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any other council comments? Councillor Westman.
Yeah, I guess my thought goes to what happens in winter when the rumble strips are full of snow and there's, you can't see the lines. I mean, I just wonder, because there's a lot of people walking on there. I mean, since it's been paved, it's even more so, I think. It's an awesome way for people to get back and forth to the commercial stores there. So I think I'd like to see something that's a clear, visible barrier, like the delineators or something of that nature. I'd like to see something like that before winter hits, so we can, we don't want to have anybody thinking that's like a lane that people can drive in. I don't want to, create that problem. So thank you.
Any other councillor comments? I just had a question, and whether I think it's to Ron or maybe even Jeff. When we were at AMO, we had a delegation with MTO regarding the request to look at the connecting link and extending that. And I just wondered where we were with follow-up on that. I do think that I think it is a pressing matter for our community, especially the area pass or as you're coming into town. And as we think about urbanizing, as we think about how that is developing. And I just wondered if there's been any follow-up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we actually did get a formal response from MTO acknowledging our presentation at AMO. And from that sort of acknowledgement email, I replied to that email and asked for a follow-up meeting with the local person, whoever would be in charge, to further discuss the extension of our connecting link. So that I usually leave it a few weeks and let them figure that out. But it has been, the proverbial ball has been thrown back to them, and we'll wait and see what happens. So should have an answer within the next month.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, if there are no other comments, there's no changes to budget, no notices of motion. So we only have two motions in front of us. The first one is for the accounts paid. A mover and a seconder that the Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph receive the attached accounts as paid for information as follows for August 2024 for a total of $605,541.10. A mover and a seconder, Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan, all in favor. And that's carried. And that if no one cares to speak to bylaws 209 2024 and 42-2024 on their first, second, and third reading, that they be considered to have been read a first time and passed, read a second time and passed, and read a third time and passed. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Regan, all in favor? That's carried. And resolved that the council meeting be adjourned at 7:19 PM. A mover and a seconder, Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. And we get a extra Monday, or no, do we get next? I guess we're no, because we meet on Tuesdays, don't